This is the Web Platform Podcast, episode number 100.
100.
We're in the triple digits now. And
I'm very impressed. Everyone should be very impressed with us.
I'm impressed we've lasted this long. Like, our threshold is not usually this high. So we have on the panel today Amal Hussein.
Hi, everyone.
Danny Blue.
Hey, guys.
Leon Revel.
Hey.
Justin Ribeiro.
Hello, wonderful people. So good to see you out there on the intertubes.
No, we had a good radio.
That's the other show. And myself, Eric Isaacson. And today, episode 100, we have some special guests from Microsoft. Jacob Rossi, who's been on the show before when we talked about Spartan, which was the precursor to Edge, I guess, the code name. And we have Travis Lathead, who's been really spearheading a lot of the features that we're really looking at, like the custom elements and service worker type stuff, the performance and the DOM, things like that. So if you guys want to just kind of talk about what's new, you guys have a new release today, is my understanding, and kind of what you're working on at Microsoft.
Yeah, so we're kind of excited today. It's a fun day for us. The Windows 10 anniversary update's going out. There's about 350 million people that are going to start getting it over the next few days.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's a little daunting, just push deploy. But yeah, lots of good stuff in there for the web platform and Edge. Tons of great accessibility work. New cool APIs, early implementations of things like the FIDO spec, so you can do like authentication with biometric on websites, like facial login or thumbprint reading on a website. We've got awesome new ES6 stuff. Almost got modules in there under the wire, but just missed this this branch point. But it's under a flag. You can go play around.
Yep.
What else is in there? Got text-to-speech, web speech API going on. Let's see. Yeah.
A couple of new elements, semantic elements.
Oh yeah, lots of new elements that came with the accessibility work, input type, color, data, output, lots of fun stuff there. I'm actually excited about playing with async functions. I've been using those a lot lately.
So you guys haven't slept. There's been no sleeping on the Microsoft Edge team.
No,
is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
This one's been pretty smooth, I think. I've been here since the late IE8 days, as starting as an intern then, and so I think this one's probably been one of the smoother releases of all of them. We kind of coasted in pretty nicely. It's shaping up to be a good build.
Amazing. So is that update going out to everybody? Like, I'm in the UK. Do we get it at the same time as everybody else, or?
Yeah. So
longer?
if you go, check for updates manually, you'll get it right away. Otherwise, we'll roll it out to you slowly, so we don't, break the internet. So.
Even the Brits.
If you are those insiders, then I think you're the first to get the build.
Yeah.
And then you guys get to find the first bugs, which we'll then fix, and then send it out to the next round of bugs. Yeah.
And how are you guys working the bugs now? Because if they're not open source, obviously you have them inside of Microsoft, but you do get developer feedback pretty quick. How are you doing that?
Yeah, one of the things we just did was we redid our bug system that we use publicly. So you can go to issues.microsoftedge.com. It's a public bug portal. It's literally live from our bug database that we're using. You can file bugs there. We've got support for dropping in little snippets from JSBin, JSFiddle, whatever. It goes direct to our team, and we'll talk back and work it out. We'd like to work on some cool stuff there too to integrate with other places that feedback exists on the web, whether it's Stack Overflow, GitHub, the Chromium bug tracker, or whatever. So that's one of the reasons we decided to go build our own bug system, was so that we could actually start to build in like plugins and whatnot that would work really well with other places that people are providing feedback. Still using user voice. That's one of the big places that we get lots of feedback from developers on what to implement next. We've changed our plans a number of times around what people are asking for. And of course, there's all kinds of cool data and stuff that we collect in terms of what the web's using and what's working and what's not. Lots of telemetry-based measures of compatibility and API usage. When can we deprecate? Blah blah blah. Is some API that we don't support all of a sudden up on the up and up, and we should go implement it? We actually publish a bunch of that stuff too. That's at data.microsoftedge.com. You can go spelunking in all kinds of cool data.
Our CSS usage stuff is up.
Yeah. So you can go see like how popular are different APIs on the web and drill down and even see like the support across browsers, etc. It's pretty cool data.
That's pretty awesome. It's good to be able to get a lot of that feedback, and it's nice to be able to, at least again for a non-open source type of thing, to be able to see like, okay, like kind of what direction they're going in. You listed off quite a few things that are going to be in this next release. I'm curious if there's anything that would be kind of the types of things that people would expect in like a progressive web apps, like so not necessarily Service Worker or something like that, but there are things like notifications, which I don't think were in there right away, and just some of those other features that people expect from mobile apps and stuff. Is there anything like that that's going into this new release?
Yeah, so we're starting to lay the bricks down for progressive web apps now. There's the Fetch API is in this build. Web notifications don't have the push capabilities there yet, but you can you can go to Twitter and have it in a background tab or minimized or whatever, and it'll raise a notification. It's built directly into the same notification center of Windows, so you have all the features there to manage it and whatnot. And we'll light that up in the future with Push and Service Worker that are under development now.
Awesome. Notifications. I'm a big fan of the notifications thing, so I'm happy to see that in there.
It's a great way to drive engagement.
Yeah.
So progressive web app's going to be a big thing for Edge then, like moving forward. You plan on implementing kind of the whole spec, or what's kind of the plan there?
Yeah, so let's unwind the question a bit. The whole spec. So it's a bunch of specs, right?
Yeah, sorry.
And I guess
The umbrella.
So I think the way to think about it is like we believe in the web as a first-class citizen for building sites in the browser and apps that are even in the store and everything in between, and that progressive enhancement is the right way to build that continuum. So we've had various forms of web apps on Windows for a while now, and one of the most recent ones is what we call it hosted web apps, but it's basically a precursor to PWA. You have a manifest, it points to a URL, and that's it, and that embodies your application. It can run outside of the browser if you want, or it can run inside of the browser if you hit that URL. So what we would like to do, or what we're working on, is basically lighting that up with the remaining standards that go with PWA, right? Service Worker, Fetch, Cache, Push, all these things, so that those applications have an offline experience, and that we can build that sort of progressive story from I'm on the site in the browser, I want to keep this thing in some way, whether you want to call it install it, pin it to home screen, whatnot, but up level this site to a more permanent thing on your box, and we want to build that basically first class next to any other app on Windows. So that means like let's put it in your list of apps. You should be able to uninstall it like any other app. You should be able to see what battery usage it has like any other app, what data usage it's using, what permissions it has. So we're building that sort of end-to-end spectrum today. Outside of like Service Worker, which is still in development, you can basically deploy, any site, any application-like site to the Windows Store today, and then this will light up as a more PWA type of experience in the future.
Yeah, fundamentally, I don't think we have. We want users to experience the apps in whatever way is best for them, and they shouldn't need to be invested in what the technology is that produces the experience. And obviously, we love web technologies, and as such, we've tried to integrate them into the more mainstream Windows experience. So you can pin your website to the start page, and you can put your apps on there, and it all just looks like one seamless set of interesting experiences. So the degree to which a website can build these progressive experiences so that they light up more and more and more as you integrate deeper and deeper, then that's just better for everybody.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
No, I was going to ask on the note of the progressive web apps. One of the things I'm confused about across the board too is the manifest JSON. If that's going to be used like in something like the Windows Store as a discovery tool.
Yeah. So today you can publish an app in the Windows Store using manifest JSON if you use Manifold.js. It's manifoldjs.com. It's on GitHub. It's a project that basically takes the W3C manifest and translates it into what the Windows Store uses today. In the future, we hope to light up just native straight support with JSON manifest per spec. The Manifold.js was kind of our way to incubate as the manifest schema kind of iterated. Now that's pretty stable, so we're looking at making that a native thing. We're also looking at other things, so just submitting to a store is one way someone might acquire a PWA, but we also want them to be able to browse to it in the browser and whatnot. So we're looking at things like can Bing index these and it'll add offer an install from search results, or perhaps even populate the store like a search engine would with known PWAs out there on the web, right? Like if my mom wants to find something by the browser, she's just browsing Facebook and she clicks a link and that happens to be a PWA, she should be able to install it. If she wants to go get an app because that's her mental model and she goes to the store because that's the mechanics that she has and she's been ingrained with, then they should be available there too. So we should figure out a way to make sure that the web is present in the places you find it.
And with Bing as being I forgot who said it to me. Somebody, I think it was one of you guys, but it was like 30% of the world traffic is for search has been through Bing. So it's not something you can just kind of discount when you're dealing with search engine optimization. One of the things too that Google does that Microsoft doesn't do, from my understanding, is as far as from a search technology, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, is the JavaScript gets parsed for a few seconds or whatever, and it gets kind of looked at for content, and as it tries to render it, but if it takes too long to load it, it won't work. But Bing doesn't try to do that. My understanding is
actually
progressive web apps. I don't know how that would work. Actually,
Bing can now run the full Edge HTML engine, including Chakra and JavaScript for indexing.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's actually how we're collecting a lot of that data that's at data.microsoftedge.com that I was talking about. A bunch of that data is in partnership that we do with Bing in terms of crawling and indexing what's being used on the web. And it's not just static analysis. We're running the web page, and we are flagging what APIs are actually being called and getting information about that in order to prioritize and optimize the platform.
Yeah, there's only so much.
So you are parsing JavaScript, it sounds like. That's interesting to know. Oh, very cool. Thank you.
That's quite the telemetry upgrade overall, then. I mean, in terms of understanding how the web is working today.
I've got a really quick question. Well, maybe not so quick. Back to backtracking on the progressive web app experience in Edge. So much of that is also the developer experience, and so if you guys could maybe talk a little bit about what the developer experience is like, in terms of supportive tools, and really what is the dev tool experience in Edge?
Yeah, so I'll break it down a little bit. First, we'll just talk about it generically. So we have the F12 developer tools, in the browser, basic browser tools. Those have a unique capability that you can hit F12 or Control-Shift-I and open them up in the browser, inspect element, whatever.
You can do the Control-Shift-I.
Yeah, and it's short for inspect, I think. But yeah, so you can do that, and you can debug a web page. And this is like super esoteric, but we'll share it with all your viewers so that you can know this. F12 actually is its own application on Windows. There's an F12 folder, believe it or not, in your Windows System 32 folder that you can go launch what's called F12 Chooser. Okay, so that's kind of buried, and we're gonna do some work to up-level that a bit. But if you do that, what's cool about it is it actually will search all the running applications on Windows and show you every place that the Edge HTML engine is running, whether that's the browser or a web app or a web view inside of a native app. And you can literally attach our dev tools to any of those things and go debug it. So we'll work on maybe not hiding that down in System 32 in the future. It's a little bit of a work in progress, but it works. And so what we'll do is we'll keep expanding upon that as we build out the PWA story. So right now we're looking at what should the debugging experience be for Service Worker. You need to how do you break on a push notification, right? If it would be one thing to be able to simulate a fake push notification and jump into a breakpoint and debug it. It's another thing to actually want to break on a push notification that comes over from your actual notification service, right? What if the browser is not even open? Right, you might have a bug that only repros in that scenario. So these are fundamentally different entry points, if you will, to developer tools in general that we have to think through as we build out those features. So yeah, there are lots of crazy whiteboarding and stuff going on what that should look like right now, but yeah.
A lot of good possibilities, though, especially with you just recently had Node Chakra at one of the Node conferences. I think it was announced.
Yeah. So you've got Chakra Core went open source last year.
Yep.
And then there was work to do Node Chakra, and then I think just recently they announced that they have a very experimental version of it running on Linux and OS X.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool to see them make that journey. You can run Node Chakra kind of anywhere.
I don't think they have JIT working on those platforms yet, but
yeah, I think it's just interpreter cross-platform right now. JIT's a little harder, but that's on their roadmap. It's kind of cool.
Look at that F12 chooser. That's so cool.
Travis is
everybody trying
this? The new tools.
just digging around to see what you can find now. See, everybody's learning something.
Yeah,
That's great.
Shift J is on a Mac, so not for Edge, but just in general for Chrome and other things.
Another DevTools thing that I think is worth noting is there's also on our GitHub we have a thing called what we call the diagnostics adapter. It's this open source project that we've just been it's kind of experimental, if you will, but what it does is it actually attaches to Edge and exposes the Chrome debug protocol that are used by a number of other tools. So you could attach the Chrome tools to Edge. You could attach there's extensions for Sublime and VS Code, so you can actually attach to Edge through that adapter and debug there. That's something that we've been exploring. We'd like to bring potentially bring that in as a native thing that we support in Edge in the future. So.
You know,
Are you
the
doing
DevTools sort
sorry,
of.
guys.
Sorry, yeah, the DevTools. I know it's not on our list of things, but I mean, in terms of DevTools and the protocols that DevTools protocols can be quite dense. I know there's been some talk about sort of bridging those gaps in the past between browsers so that you get a kind of congruent, sort of nice, flowy sort of dev experience through any set of tools that you want, whether that's Edge's tools or Chrome's tools or some third-party thing that you want to use. I mean, is that something that is on the roadmap? I know it's somewhat, it's kind of on the, not to make a pun, but on the edge of, things that are generally going on in general.
Boo, Justin. Boo.
I didn't say it was a good pun.
We've never heard that one around here. No. So Kenneth Auchenberg just joined the Microsoft team, and he's kind of done some of the best research into the overlap across browsers in terms of debug protocols. That the diagnostics adapter is a fairly simple subset of the protocol. It gets you enough to do your element DOM explorations, your debugging, your styles, and that kind of thing. When you get into the realm of like performance tracing, memory inspection, even network, it becomes a little bit more challenging because that's when you start to get into the bowels of the internals of the browser, and that's where the differences in how things are implemented across browser, internally, start to get surfaced. Like the data structures for representing the heap in Chakra are very different than in V8. It's possible, I think, for us to try to align those things, and that comes with some interesting engineering challenges as well. But that's something we're thinking through, and Kenneth is kind of leading the charge there.
Weekend project, just a piece of cake.
He's got a cool, I forget the URL, but he's got a cool page that actually goes through the whole protocol and like what's supported across browsers and what's different and what's considered a public API versus private and whatnot.
It's a similar project in complexity to the Houdini work and trying to create a standardized way of representing all the different web platforms rendering engines.
I think it's great to have the diversity to an extent. The different variants.
I think it is.
To move quickly, innovate there.
But
yeah, exactly.
I definitely feel like there is some value, though, to having some level of similarity, right? Because everybody has their favorite browser that they develop on, and I know Chrome DevTools in and out, but if I have to work in Firefox, I'm really, really clumsy. So I think there's definitely some value to having some some shared APIs and some shared behavior.
Yeah, that's kind of the like age-old question from a browser engineer's perspective about what to do, like how to innovate in DevTools. On the one hand, every developer needs to go from one browser to the next, and like some familiarity and some commonality there, especially in user experience and APIs, is very valuable. On the other hand, you don't want to be like hamstringed to be bold and go do something different. Like, who's to say that it should just be the elements, the debugger, the resources, and the network? Is that the right way to do it? I don't know. We have some designers that have done some explorations, and they're like, what if you just completely changed how it worked? Which could be cool, but also could be daunting if you're a developer just trying to go from one browser to the next. It's an interesting conundrum.
And you learn from each other, which is awesome. Like all the browser vendors seem to be talking now, which is like incredible. I mean, like if you look at the old days, right, where you came on in IE8, right? That was not even close to the case. And now it's like everybody's hey, we're doing it this way. How are you guys doing it? And I think it's in a very healthy way in the community.
Yeah, we just had a bunch of folks here in Redmond last week. Google, Mozilla, and jQuery talking pointer events.
Sounds fun.
That wasn't contentious at all. I remember that conversation. That was smooth sailing when all those tickets landed.
Yeah, we have to pretend like we don't get along, but we kind of do.
So it's interesting. Today we have a lot more channels of communication with the other browsers. I mean, you can go back to IE8, and we were communicating, but it was through the exclusively through the standards track discussions, which were often adversarial in nature. Now we communicate very regularly with our friends in Chrome and as well.
The web has changed a lot in that regard. I mean, you see a lot more conversations occurring that you did not see 10 years ago in terms of not just browser vendors, but library creators and everything else that sort of happened in the open source community. Didn't used to be this way. There's been a lot of changes for the better as the whole for the web, and you see a lot of that in the sort of the applications that people are building and the way browsers have sort of progressed.
Yeah, and it's great from a browser vendor perspective. It's great to have a dialogue that's not just with browser vendors. Some of us have a web development background, and that helps, but not every browser engineer does. And so you have people working on specs that are trying to optimize for a customer that they might not fully understand. And so having web developers in that conversation, doing specs on GitHub, and having social media conversations, whatever it is actually really helpful in designing new APIs.
So I know that
the Web Incubator Community Group, if anyone's listening, please, we'd love your contributions there.
Yeah, super awesome place to find out and even also suggest whole new ideas. Lots of things have gotten just suggested there and materialized into specs in a matter of days.
That's awesome. That sounds great. I know Leon and some other people want to move on to talk about some web components stuff, but I have one more question that I'm kind of tying to PWAs. One of the big points of PWAs is mobile. A big focus, I would say, is mobile and mobile performance and things like that. And one of those things is getting the information from the server to the phone as quickly as possible. And so I think in this new release there's Wolf 2 for fonts. And I was curious if on the roadmap there are plans for support for any other types of compression like Brotli or WebP.
So I think we're looking at a couple of different things. One of the interesting things about WAF 2 being in Edge now is it actually does use a form of Brotli under the hood for that compression. And so I know there's a conversation going on with our networking team about whether we can leverage that at the networking layer as well. Image formats gets a little bit more complicated. There's a couple of different options and places to go there. Video formats we're doing work as well. So we created the Alliance for Open Media. So for the first time ever, you've got browser vendors actually working together on creating video codecs, which is kind of cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of comes out of there. I don't know. I actually don't know of our specific plans. It's a little bit out of my domain, but our status roadmap does track image formats and compression formats, and so that would be the first place that you'd hear about it if we lock down a plan.
Okay, so it seems nothing like 100%, at least as far as you know, nothing 100% concrete, but it's definitely something. Of course, you guys are monitoring it, and trying to figure out the best ways to get us more information faster.
I definitely know it's something that's actively being a bunch of different aspects of it are being actively investigated by the networking team, and there's lots of different realms of performance there. Like they've been working on TLS 1.3, trying to get down to 0 round trip times for HTTPS, which is also super important for the PWA performance story.
And for everything.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we'll see more of them. We'll let them get some sleep after today's release, and then we'll see what pops out.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Cool. So
and HTTP 2, right? H2? Oh wait, it's done.
Any comments on Quick? No.
So we all know that web components are awesome. I like to say that web components are set to change how we build user interfaces for the web. So if you could speak a little bit about that, kind of how Edge plans to kind of move forward with web components. Are we going to have access to the version 1 APIs for Shadow DOM custom elements anytime soon? Kind of what's the story there? That'd be really cool to hear.
I can talk to that a little bit. Unfortunately, it's not fantastic news. We had Shadow DOM on the roadmap, and it's still on the roadmap, but we've had to delay it a little bit, unfortunately, because we really needed to get the foundation of our DOM platform sort of reorganized a bit. We were working off of 20-year-old code that was really designed for a different kind of web and optimized for text, and we spent about 4 years actually on that project, which wrapped up in January. And my anticipation at the time was that the code would be pristine, and then we would launch right into using that code to build Shadow DOM and then custom elements and rolling forward. What happens in reality is we got the project done, and now we need to spend a little bit of time optimizing the code. So that's what we're doing right now. That's the scoop on my team's efforts anyway. So we've got a great DOM. It's beautiful. It's a tree. You know, an intern could have designed it. It just took 4 years for the rest of us engineers to.
We've got a gentleman on our team who's he's a partner engineer. He's a super smart guy. He's been at Microsoft forever. It's just crazy computer scientist, and he's always just like, it's just a simple computer science problem. It's just a tree, and but you know, I think like you can't interplay what like Travis's team did here. They literally ripped out an engine while the car is going down the highway and replaced it. Right, like 4 years of work. We shipped in that time frame, right, multiple times, and they took out the core infrastructure that drives the DOM and Edge HTML and replaced it and kept all 7,000 some odd APIs working as they were supposed to. And I'm sure we broke something along the way, but you know, it's actually pretty impressive. But that entire project was designed from the beginning with, you know, Shadow DOM and whatnot in mind, in order to have a, you know, kind of foundation that will support these APIs. And so yeah, I think the next step, as Travis mentioned, is performance. If we don't optimize the DOM performance a good bit, then you're not going to have a great Shadow DOM experience anyway if we were to implement the APIs. So I think that's the order of events.
That's exactly right.
Cool.
Exactly
That sounds really good. You know, you've got to do it right? So amazing. Thank you.
And
Yeah,
is custom elements also being held back as well?
Yes. Technically, it doesn't need so much of the DOM internals, but we wanted to stage it because we felt like Shadow DOM was the more crucial piece of the puzzle, and certainly the more complex one. And we wanted to get that long lead project started earlier. So.
And is your feeling that maybe 6 months, a year, you'll be to where you want to be for performance, and then start, or is it like 2 weeks?
Oh my goodness. Well, as you
7,000 APIs.
we could
one a day handle
for a long time. Now we have some specific goals we want to achieve, and I think we want to get those done in like the next 6 months. And then there are a whole bunch of projects. So we're going to get Shadow DOM in for sure. I can't really comment on exactly when it'll be.
Performance is one of those interesting things, right? Like you can set a goal for yourself, and it's actually really hard. It's one of the hardest things to estimate in terms of software engineering, right? Like how much work do I have to get this fast? Well, it's not how you approach the problem, right? You look at like optimization possibilities, and you know, you go highlight where's my n-squared algorithms that I can, you know, get to be faster, and so those will get you wins, but it's hard to really estimate exactly how much wins will they get and how much work is there to get to a concrete measure of I want these APIs to execute in this much time.
Yeah, it's not really a fair question. I know, like it's not very agile. You know, you can't put a date on it. But,
Jeez,
I had to
stop making unfair statements, Eric.
Yeah, that
I'm
you
just
know,
very excited.
your boss actually asked Eric to ask you that question on the podcast. just getting it on recording, you know.
But the other cool thing with the way that we ship now, right, is we have the Windows Insider program has several million people in it that run bleeding edge versions of Windows and Edge. And so one of the things we get to do here is, as we work on the optimizations, we can actually ask questions around how expensive is this API in the real world? Like, how many people, if I make this API twice as fast as it is, what does that translate in terms of page load time improvements? What does that translate in terms of number of times an average user would actually hit this API and experience the, 30 millisecond speed up or whatever that we're looking at? So we can actually iterate on it, and it is very much an agile process because we can ask those questions, get the answers, and then go make the optimizations accordingly.
Yep. As we've delved into really doing some performance analysis, it is just amazing the kind of crappy code and algorithms we've lived with for so long. I have a couple of examples if you don't mind me sharing.
Nobody likes to pull out the Jenga pieces from the old code, I know.
It's very satisfying. It's very satisfying. I mean, in one example, we found that when an element leaves the document and when it is inserted into the document, we would send a notification to the CSS Cascade engine saying, hey, you need to go and reapply the cascade to see what's changed, right? So you can do a layout again. And we just sort of put that notification in there, and it turns out that for every single element in every single subtree that gets removed, we send that notification to the cascade, and we do it when the node enters and then exits, and commonly you're moving nodes around the tree. So you get this 2 times the number of nodes that cause all of these notifications. And we were seeing that in the Cascades queue for notifications, you just get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of notifications, and it just took so long just to process that queue that it was taking forever. It was really slowing things down. And we studied that, reworked a little bit about how that notification is sent, and now we put one notification in the Cascade system, and it reevaluates it, and we saved like a second running some internal micro benchmarks. It's just phenomenal. And those kinds of games are like hanging fruit all over the place, and I hope we have something really measurable and demonstrable that we can release, and I'm going to blog about it when we get to that point. Then we'll release code and be like, hey, here's the effect of all this work.
That's why I don't have an easy task, and I think it's great the work you're doing.
Yeah, I second that. Actually, Houdini had this project. Houdini uncovered a lot of the same similar types of inefficiencies with CSS painting and why are things so slow? There's so much processing time converting strings to numbers and back again. But now we're just going to stick with one type and now save X amount of processing time. So it's really interesting. I think going back into really old code where maybe decisions were made under pressure or under duress, and we've kind of just taken for granted. That this is functioning, this is good, so we're not gonna refactor that. But
Exactly.
So not to date myself, but when I started, there wasn't even the developer tools, right? There was a plugin for IE7, right, which was a new browser, and IE6 had this crazy app that you could download that was really hacky that you could use, and then you could use Fiddler also with IE6 for HTTP, right?
Yeah.
But there was things that bugged me with the way that IE ran that have been fixed for a long time now, like CSS. When your CSS file was too big, X amount of bytes, it would just stop the parser mid-rule, wherever it lands. Bam! Hey, this is enough bytes. Cut it off. And you would never get an error message, right? It would just, you would be there for months trying to figure out what happened, why did this stop, and checking your code and checking other people's code. And now you don't find those, so that's good.
Yeah. I don't even know to keep account of the what we call just interop bugs, right? Bugs where we're just different, and a lot of times it would be there were both cases where we were just flat out wrong, and there are cases where we're the lone soldier following the spec somewhere that no one noticed, but you know what? The web and all other browsers do it this way, so the spec is wrong. And we used to count all these, and I think we were some like 8,000 or 9,000 fixes like this since we started Edge. And I have no idea how high the number is now, but like some of those are just small little speed bumps, and some of those are pretty big, things that are a nightmare to work around as a dev. So, yeah.
Well, interop is still hard, I think. I think people misunderstand that, we have greenfield browsers, or evergreen browsers rather, and everything is fixed. Everything works the same. But alas, interop is not so simple.
If only we'd stop adding new features, we could finally get everything to work.
Yeah, let's put a moratorium on features. Yeah, the web's done.
I've heard somebody had that idea once, and I heard it went over not so great.
Well, it feels like JavaScript was able to do that. I mean, like, how many years was it between ES5 and ES6, and so
that was because of the war. That was because of the language war internally that happened. I have Shield.
Maybe there could be like a browser feud or something, and there could be like, you guys can go on strike, like the writers. Remember that all the writers went on strike after the reality TV shows. So.
Yeah, but for everybody that watched TV when the writer's strike went on, it was an incredibly boring period of time, right? And I can't imagine being a web developer without new APIs to go play around with, right?
Yeah, I'd be happy to not have bugs that are caused by new browser versions. So I would be.
What are you guys going to talk about on your podcast?
I was about to say, Amel, you're trying to shut us down.
No, it would be great. Everybody would have time for us. Everybody would be like, yeah, sure, I'd come on, no problem. Anyways, actually, speaking of somewhat of mobile, I actually really wanted to ask that: is there ever a vision for Microsoft Edge kind of being used on non-Windows mobile devices, right? So, I have an iPhone. I've recently joined the iPhone Nation, and so first thing I did was download Chrome, right? So I didn't want to use Safari, and so.
But it's not really Chrome.
Not really Chrome.
Yeah.
You're probably right that it's not really Chrome.
It's still more usable than the Safari interface, I think. But yeah.
But there's when you're looking at tables showing like what's supported where, they're very specific when they say Chrome for Android and things like that. It's not just mobile Chrome.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting aspects to that question. So I think first and foremost, we're building a new browser. It's very much a startup culture here. I think the first couple releases of Edge were kind of bare bones in some ways in terms of user experience and also just the platform as we got our house in order. And it's not really till this release that's coming out today that I feel like is a fairly powerful browser. Now there's extensions, and now there's all the new ES6 stuff, and we're getting the DOM in order, as Travis was talking about, and it feels like a very solid browser. And I think that's sort of step one for us is getting a great browsing experience for Windows 10. You buy a PC, you buy a Mac, you buy an iPhone, you buy an Android. One of the things most all users expect is that it has a great browser that just comes with it. And so that's definitely our focus is making Edge the browser that's sort of best on Windows 10 and has a great integrated experience across all the devices, including new places like Xbox or HoloLens. We're even running Edge HTML on Raspberry Pis these days, so you can do hosted web apps and progressive web apps on a little tiny $10 computer, which is super cool. Yeah. But the focus there is building out the Edge browser and the web platform as an app platform for Windows. And then there's a different question, which is what would be the role of that experience across other devices? I like Satya Nadella, the CEO at Microsoft, said talks about this in a really interesting way. He talks about mobile not being a device, but being an adjective that describes the experience in the sense of the experience is mobile, not the device. So today's is less about the fact that the thing is in my pocket and more about I'm starting an activity on the thing that's in my pocket, and I come into the office and I switch onto my laptop, or I go home and I finish a movie on my Xbox and go up to the bedroom and watch it on my Chromecast or whatever. Your experiences are now going across all these things, and so that mobility is important. So you see Microsoft in general doing this, where you can have an iPhone and have Skype. You can have an Android and have Outlook or Office, whatever, and you can have these experiences transcend across devices, whether you're on Windows or not. And so we have to think about what that means for the web, right? Like, does that mean having Edge, the browser, on other platforms, or does that mean just making sure your web experiences can transcend from a browser on one of those devices onto Edge or on Windows? So yeah, I think the objective answer to your question is we don't have immediate plans to take Edge everywhere else. We still have lots of work to do to build Edge and make it an awesome experience. We've got lots of cool ideas on where we can kind of push the envelope on what a browser experience is on Windows, and I think we'll keep doing that. But where it tactically makes sense, like Chakra, for example, we were talking about earlier, we want to be able to run Node on a Linux device or something like that from Chakra. Like that's something we're exploring and they're working on. But I think there's a lot of advantage to us, at least for now, focusing on our home base. We build things in lockstep with Windows a lot of times. Like we'll build some cool new graphics API into DirectX into Windows, and we'll light it up in Edge, and that's how we'll get some cool experiences there. Like the speech API was one of those, where literally the speech API for Edge HTML was actually a weekend project a developer just like slipped in that wasn't really on our plans, because there was a Windows team that was building these Windows runtime speech APIs, and he took a look at it and he's like, this maps really well, I'll go plumb it in, and boom, it's out. So there's a lot of places where kind of focusing on our home turf helps us be more agile and more efficient, and that's what we're doing for now. But I think there is a question there about the mobility of the experience from other platforms and to Windows.
Yeah. On that note too, I mean I don't know how long. Can you guys stay for another 10, 15 minutes, or do you have another meeting?
I'm good.
So like I'm not a Windows user that much anymore. Sorry. I do love Edge though. I wish it was on all the platforms. But I listen to .NET Rocks occasionally, which is a podcast about .NET technologies and Microsoft technologies. And they had this one episode on working with HoloLens. And they were talking about building out apps using the Edge web views and using JavaScript as a first-class citizen, using Unity, and building that all out into the store. And I thought that was amazing, like the integration of teams that you guys have. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we have done, like as an organization in Windows and including Edge, is build what we call the universal Windows platform, and so that actually translates into building a version of the operating system that is core to all the devices that Windows ships on, whether it's a PC that sits in front. Travis has to run, so we'll say bye.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you, Travis. Really appreciate it.
Travis.
You gotta go make the dawn fast.
Keep fighting the good fights.
So we've been focusing on having the same core operating system platform, whether you're on a PC, a tablet, a phone, an Xbox, or glasses you sit on top of your head, right? And that allows us to build things that just are really one-click deploy across all of these. And the web, in my opinion, is the best platform to develop that for. So I mean, they make XAML and C# and whatnot run across all these devices as well. But the web is really the one that is farthest ahead in terms of responsive design, in terms of progressive enhancement and lighting up device capabilities. It was kind of funny. I got pulled in this was a while back, but I got pulled into like a XAML team's like spec review, and I was like, why am I invited here? And they're like, well, so we want to build basically media queries for XAML, and it was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I can shed some light on how we built that and how that works in Edge, and so you see them kind of feeding off each other, but really the web is farthest along in that story. So that's one of the things when it comes back to PWAs that I like to remind folks is that the P is progressive, right? PWAs today exist on mobile, but really it should be progressive and light up not just in terms of the capabilities of the platform you run on, but the device that you run on. So your progressive web app should be able to run on a tablet. It should be able to run on a TV. It should be able to run even on a hologram floating off in space, whatever. And so responsive design and adaptive design are pretty core to that experience, and we'll light it up underneath you by building the same web platform across all those devices.
Yeah, the progressive part I think gets lost actually, and I know this got brought up at the PWA Summit as well, that progressive, a lot of the initial focus has been on mobile, but there are a massive amount of platforms out there now that people have a tendency to forget it, particularly if you work on the consumer side, that mobile drives so much traffic now. But I work on internal apps. They live and die on desktops. We do media stuff. They live and die on huge touchscreens and televisions. You don't want to lose the P in PWA, otherwise you don't get those experience across the board.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a bunch of big name folks that are doing this on Windows too, across all these different devices. You see like Shazam, like I think Nickelodeon, and like Pandora. A whole bunch of these folks are building like their apps that are in the Windows Store are native, are web apps that are just responsive and progressive across devices. There was even a demo, I think, at the Build conference this year of like a Pandora app running on a Raspberry Pi on top of Edge HTML, which is kind of cool. That basically, without changing, your code, you can just respond to the device as well as the capabilities you have.
Are there any plans in the future to have to have something like headless Edge?
That one's a really popular question, and I think it's something that I personally hope that we go do. We have some things that kind of, sort of, if you look from the side and squint, look like it. For example, I mentioned the Bing crawler, right? Running Edge HTML. That is a headless, by the basic definition of the term, version of Edge HTML. Now it's optimized to be able to run in a crawler that's highly parallelized and running across 33 trillion URLs. And so it's not what you want if you want to run unit tests or something like that. But I look at I do like my 20% time, I guess you could say, is coding for the dev.microsoftedge.com site. And we like anybody else have Travis running or Jenkins or whatever, and I think about the amount of code, as a browser vendor, I think about the amount of code out there that's getting continually tested against WebKit, basic for the most part, most Phantom.js or whatnot, and I think about the opportunity about being able to have that run in, I think the Google team started saying they're going to work on sort of true Blink support for Phantom, and I think something like that for Edge HTML would make a lot of sense. It also is, to us, basically another product to support. It's an API that we have to go expose. And the first step in that for us has really been nailing our WebDriver experience, because actually under the hood, it's a lot of the same capabilities that you need. So we have first-party native support for WebDriver. There's a WebDriver you can download. And that was something that didn't even exist for IE. There were third-party projects that kind of work, Selenium and things. But we have a first-party driver, and we're building the APIs directly into Edge HTML to support all that. There's a roadmap for those APIs as well. And I think when we feel like WebDriver is in a fairly square place, the next step is, can we build on top of that and have it run in a sort of headless environment. And I think that is highly useful. There will be the gotcha, though, if you think about a lot of these services, that at least for now, it still only runs on Windows. So we'll need to make sure that that story makes sense, that you can, the right CI servers and whatnot also have Windows support, and that type of thing. But I think it's absolutely something valuable, and it's totally on our backlog that we'd like to do.
Cool. So I've got one final question. So what are some interesting challenges that browser engineers face that like us developers kind of be surprised to learn about?
Interesting challenge. So there's a couple that come to mind. I think that the compatibility is a lot harder than when web developers appreciate. I think the scale of the web is so large, you can't even really rationalize about it. It's really easy to be in a standards conversation or just a chat with other browser engineers and be like, yeah, but nobody uses that API, or oh, come on, does anybody ever call this with that parameter? It wasn't intended to do that. And the reality is it's like the web is like the world's largest execution of the 1,000 monkeys on a typewriter will eventually write Shakespeare, right? Like 7,000 APIs and 33 trillion URLs. Someone's doing that, and you're going to break them if you change it. And so things like deprecating things is really, really hard, and just feeling comfortable about it, like actually knowing what data you could collect to know that we can safely change this API or remove it is actually really, really hard, because you've got all kinds of variables there in terms of, like, if I want to instrument an API, I got to make sure that instrumentation doesn't slow down your browsing experience, or I got to make sure that it's not, we don't, to answer the question that we have, we don't, take back data that would be privacy sensitive. So there's a lot of things to balance there that limit us in terms of our ability to actually like rationalize and think about what the web uses, what the patterns are that matter, that keep the web ticking. And that's, I know, a struggle across all browser vendors, and that's one of the places that we've, in the last year or so, the increased communication channels and whatnot have really helped. I know Rick Byers over on the Chrome team has started doing what he kind of coined as web predictability. So it's like a conglomeration of like interoperability, compatibility, as well as like avoiding foot gun APIs that tank perf or whatever. And we have a similar effort on our side, and we're sharing notes all the time, sharing data, like here's the fire hose of what Bing gets, and like let's figure out how to tackle this problem together. But it's super hard, and a lot of times, frankly, we're just sticking our finger to the wind and hoping nothing breaks. That's why preview builds and Canary and whatnot exist.
Cool, thank you.
Is there anything you're excited about that's coming up in the next few builds?
I mean, I'm super excited about the service worker story. I think next few builds is probably a little too generous. It's a huge, huge effort to go implement service worker. But I think you're going to see phases of that light up. We'll start to have, like cache API and that type of thing. There will be lots of cool nuggets along the way elsewhere. I know the same guy that did the like text-to-speech web speech API stuff has been looking at like, can he do the speech recognition stuff, and how feasible is that? So I don't know exactly. We just forked for today, so like I don't know exactly what's in store, but we will probably be, as we're doing investigations now into like what's the next like iteration of next sprint of features, and so I think you'll see some stuff light up on like status.microsoftedge.com. You'll see a bunch of things light up in the coming weeks that once we get a confidence around being able to build it.
All right. Well, we've gone over on time, so I apologize for that.
All right. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to see you again. It's been a long time. It's been since well over a year, I think, since we had you guys on.
Yeah.
And so,
good to be.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive the stuff you guys are doing, and all the browser vendors too, like for Chrome, Firefox, everyone that I've seen online, in the discussions, like one thing that I really love is you guys are passionate. and so it definitely comes out in really innovative and interesting ways. It's great. I love it. So thank you.
It's a fun time to work on the web. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Encourage your viewers to join the conversation. Get in and engage with us on Twitter. We're just people. Like there's like this scare thing that sometimes I see where people are like, I don't want to talk to browser vendors. We're just engineers like anybody else, and I think I encourage people to file bugs, talk to us on Twitter, share ideas, get in the incubator community group, and say why isn't there an API that does X Y Z, or why does X Y Z do ABC? Like ask these questions and get involved. We can all shape where this goes.
Definitely. So thank you for coming on. If people want to find you, can they contact you on Twitter or GitHub or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm at Jacob Rossi on Twitter. We have at MSEdgeDev is staffed by just engineers. You're not going to hit a marketing person. So you can reach out, find the right person. I've got lots of folks that are there. We're on GitHub, Stack Overflow, whatnot.
And we'll have Travis's information as well on the notes. And this has been episode number 100. Microsoft.
Congratulations, Eric. Congratulations, number 100.
Yeah, I was about to say, Eric started this thing. Eric started this thing 100 episodes ago. So absolutely, congratulations.
Yeah.
That's why we're all on today, Eric. It's to give you a virtual birthday cake.
This cake is delicious.
Yeah, and Jacob, this was a really great talk. Thanks.
Anytime.